Retro Hangover is supported via Patreon by listeners like you. We would especially like to thank patrons Lyle McCarns, Randall Quiggle, Tony G, Tom the Superhero, Studstill Smash the Milkman, Lucas from Game Over Hell, Raging Demon from Command List, Mast Keaton, JC, Ozzy Garcia, Megan Caruso, Dave Jackson from Tales from the Backlog, Retro Overdrive, Soha, Storm Beagle and Captain N from Retrotopia, The Emperor, Matt aka Stormageddon from Funning Games and Reignite Podcasts, Van Fernal and B. Ross from Super Garbage Day, Jared Breland, Keith Gasper from the Main Quest Podcast, Retro Vixen, Eric Guess from the Unlockables Podcast, Nomad from the Retro Wildlands Podcast, Ash Event, Alan Bingham, Mike the Ref from Backbreaker Gaming, Alt, Low 5 Alex from Low 5 Gaming, Oh Me, Gary Heather, Makeshift Money, Riskel, Sega Boy 7, and Adam R. Your continued engagement and generous donations are deeply appreciated. Welcome to The Flight, a consumable curation of champions and catastrophes that is considerate of your chronometer. It is me, myself, Chris Copleen, a generational icon, one could say, if you would like to. I would appreciate that. I think that'd be great. And I'm joined by another generational icon of his generation, as one would be. It is the generationally challenged Shane Dick Dragon Saltaire. Shane.
I'm not entirely sure what that means, but yes, hello.
Nor am I.
Okay, cool.
I've been drinking.
Well, I mean, I guess it's on brand.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole shtick. Shtick? I can't say that word right, but you know what I mean.
Shtick.
Shtick. Anyway.
So close.
I know. I'm never going to get it. But today we are talking about the best console generations. And I always switch this up about who nominated, but this is back-to-back nominations. Actually, back-to-back-to-back, if you go back to the Hudson Soft games. Nominations by the one, the only main quester, Keith Gasper. He's on fire with these.
He's becoming too powerful. Somebody must stop him.
Someone must stop him. I mean, they're all voting for it. I mean, it's up to them. Will there be an end to Keith's tyranny next month? We always have to put the tyranny for people who win elections. I don't know where to go with that. Anyway, let's quickly move forward here. We're just going to be talking about our favorite console generations. By the way, I'm going to be listing them in the numbers. I don't know how Shane's going to be listing them. I don't like to refer to console generations by first, second, third, fourth. However, that's just how they are colloquially. That's another word I can't say right. Cloaca. Can you say it, Shane?
Colloquially.
Cloaca.
Yes.
Colloquially known by. So I'm just going to be using those. But I'm going to say with the systems that are in there, of course. Shane, is that how you're going to do it? Or were you just going to say the Super Nintendo generation?
Nope, doing it the same way.
All right, cool. Colloquially.
Yeah.
Colloquial. Fuck, now I have to see how it's spelled. That's the only, I cannot.
I say you don't even want to look that up. It's got a Q, a bunch of L's. Yeah.
I know how to spell it. Colloquially. Yeah, now that I'm looking at it, I can say it. Colloquially.
I'm glad we're doing this live.
The hell's wrong with me? Colloquially. Maybe I can get shkicked right too. Who knows? This is an episode where Chris learns how to speak English.
Yay!
Anyway, Shane, bail me out here.
All right. I'll kick this thing off.
Number 5.
All right, my number 5 I feel like this, I don't know, maybe this will offend some people, probably people older than even us. I'm not sure, but it's third gen, which happens to be NES, Master System, and Atari 7800. It's some notable highlights, which I'm sure will have some overlap or whatever, because I mean, there's only so many generations, and we're doing a top 5. So, you got your Super Mario's, the 1, 2, and the one that Chris doesn't like. You got Legend of Zelda, another game that Chris doesn't like. You also have Gangster Town, which is everybody's favorite. Then you got, like Castlevania, Metroid, which Chris also doesn't like. I'm starting to get I'm sensing a pattern here. Anyway, so it's my number 5, because I'll be honest, like, though I did have it as a kid, it was not what I would consider to be like the gen of consoles that I air quotes grew up with. I was being born in 86 means that I was kind of at the tail end of, the NES life cycle. So though I did have both an NES and a Master System, not concurrently, they're not ones that I have like a ton of like love and nostalgia for. So that's why it's relatively so low on my list.
Yeah, that's actually, I'm not surprised. And once you hear my list, you will not be surprised that I'm not surprised. So I'm going to start off with my number 5, which is the 8th generation, which is the PS4, Xbox One, Wii U, Vita, and 3DS. And why am I putting this at number 5? Because I think the other generations that I have above it are better. Obviously, that's one. But let me speak about the good qualities of this generation, which is I really feel like it's the first generation that really decided to look back into the back catalog of previous generations and gave you access to be able to play them. Uh, there's so many ways to play old games on 8th gen systems, and it just became a flood and a glut of them. And some would say probably too much, but I don't think when you're kind of unlocking the vault, there really is a case. And I would even say in an argument that the 8th gen was kind of the last true generation of consoles. I don't look at the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, and well, Switch is a different beast in and of itself, but I don't really view the PS5 and Xbox series as new generations, as more extensions of the previous ones, because there's still games coming out for the 8th gen, just probably implicitly because the 9th gen systems are backwards compatible with them. So many games, just an unfathomable, more English words I struggle with, unfathomable amount of games that were released in this generation. New games that went different directions, but like the amount of new games too, like smaller indie games that got physical releases. I mean, as much as you want to hate on Limited Run, they really brought a lot of those indie games into the physical realm. And there's other smaller developers that had physical releases, and just name a genre. There's just all over the place. Gaming had never become more accessible at any point than the 8th generation. It became a little stale. It became way too corporate. But I think the ease of access that happened during the 8th generation, and how I just feel it really made gaming explode overall, specifically with the PlayStation 4, is just like insane to me. It blows my mind. Now, you could include PC here, because I really think PC gaming, if you go back and consider when the 8th generation started, which was back in 2012 with the Wii U, or you could go back a little further. I think the 3DS came out before the Wii U. I can't remember all the years here, but like that's also when PC gaming actually really took off in mainstream. Like PC gamers would probably fight me on this, but if you look at like Steam numbers and stuff like that, I think PC gaming really started getting adapted by more and more people during this era. I mean, if I was more in the know about graphics cards, compatibility, CPUs, and all that stuff, there'd probably be an explanation for this too. But it was wild, the explosion in gaming during this time. Just insane. So 8th gen is my number 5.
Number 4.
All right. Well, moving right up to the number 4 spot, I have settled on the 6th generation, which, if you do not know what that is, the PlayStation 2, Dreamcast, the OG Xbox, and the GameCube. I could probably just tell you that I picked this solely for the Silent Hill series, and that's probably mostly true, actually. But I mean, listen, man, there were a ton of bangers in this one too. I mean, Halo, for God's sake, Shadow of the Colossus, Skies of Arcadia, which I feel like is that like a deep cut? Do people consider Skies of Arcadia a deep cut?
They do.
Okay, well,
It is a deep cut. Yeah.
fine. It's a good game though, so you should play it. But
It's a great game.
yeah,
It's fantastic.
also go listen to our episode. But anyway, yeah, man. I mean, and I guess for those weirdos that like Smash, whatever. I mean, there's also Melee, so cool, I guess. But more importantly, all the other things. But I mean, here's the thing. At least from my perspective, you could throw and I know the Halo bro dudes will hate this, but like, you could throw all that other shit out, and just the PlayStation 2 to me is like this gen. Like, there's so many good games on the PS2 that you could probably just own that console and play just those games for like the rest of your life, and you'd probably be fine. It's a pretty expansive library. So there you go. 6th gen, number 4.
Hey, I'm going to continue this on because my number 4 is also the sixth gen.
Nice.
And yeah, I think PS2 definitely ruled the roost here. I think what strikes me most about the 6th gen and why I put it at my number 4 is it really feels like the last generation where major publishers and developers would take risks with their property. Um, I feel like everything after this they were more risk averse, for better or for worse. That rhymed. But I look at like what Nintendo was doing, and just the GameCube's weird. It's weird. Not saying that the GameCube provided the best gaming experiences with those, entries in the franchises, but it did provide a unique experience with those entries in the franchises. The PlayStation 2 was extremely robust. I do think it's a little hard to go back to a lot of those PlayStation 2 games for various reasons. I think they kind of started looking at trends, and they all started trying to do some trends, even though there was some weird there for sure. But like, nothing really sticks out with the weirdness that was the Dreamcast. Xbox had the best kind of third party multi-platform, and I think that's what really like sinks this down for me, is like this was really the birth of like that multi-platform kind of soulless approach to things, which is going to sound weird when I get to my number 1 pick. But it just feels like there's like, you see the foundation for the step up that was from the previous generation in terms of graphics. And I think like that fidelity was starting to be enhanced and getting to the point where we could finally get games that were really fully realized. This is almost in my opinion, kind of a missing link generation that I'm sure there's going to be nostalgia for down the line, but you don't have that nostalgia like early 3D titles that you did in the previous gen, and you don't get the refinement that you would have in the next generation. That's why I kind of feel like it's stuck in between. But overall, yeah, I mean, the PlayStation 2 has like action games during this time, action platformers. This was the last stand of action platformers, in my opinion. So that last hangover from the previous generation that was so popular is kind of making its last stand here, but it's also the birth of the cinematic adventure games that became really popular in the next generation, and kind of just giving birth to the foundation of the modern first person shooter in this generation too, even though that wasn't fully realized in many ways, but it really did a lot of things there too. So you're seeing a lot of foundations for the next generation, a lot of refinement from the previous generation. My dog is making noise. I promise not to shock him with a shock collar. I don't have one. But right, like it's one of the most entertaining generations in terms of just like looking back and seeing what was happening, who was getting in, who was getting out, and what developers were doing. RAP Dreamcast doing all the weird stuff that was beautiful. But yeah, that's it's my fourth pick. It's my fourth and my number 4.
Yeah, and I just want to add on real quick before we move on to the next one, because what you were talking about kind of reminded me of it, that I think one of the reasons I do really appreciate this particular generation of consoles as well is though the capability was there, to me, it was still very much like the last generation of consoles that wasn't completely infected by online connectivity.
Yeah.
So I, I feel like people now probably wouldn't necessarily even understand that or be like, why would you want something that doesn't connect to the fucking internet? Everything's on the internet, but there's just something about it. I can't, it's hard to describe. There's something about it where it's just like, I have this, I own it. It is what it is. It's this like self-contained thing. And I don't have to worry about, freaking constant software updates and, whatever, all the other garbage, ads being injected into my fucking menus, like just all of that shit. So I think that's an important part of it as well.
Also, the Game Boy Advance slaps, which is part of this generation. You didn't say it.
True.
So it's a great little system.
Number 3.
All right. Well, I did some like last minute shuffling because I was thinking about what I personally really feel about these things. And if I'm being honest with myself, this I think is really my number 3, truly. And that is following right up on this one, the 7th generation, which happens to be the Xbox 360, PS3, and the Wii. Now, of course, I just got done pontificating about the evils of internet connectivity. And there are a lot of reasons why it feels bad, man. But this was like it's hyperbolic to say, but I feel like in a lot of ways, this was really like a golden age, almost in some cases, pseudo renaissance of video gaming, mostly for Nintendo. But it really,
it's a revolution.
Yeah, it is. In fact, yeah. It really can't be understated just how absolutely fucking ubiquitous the Nintendo Wii was. It was everywhere. It was in nursing homes so that people could play Wii bowling. Like, say what you want, because I am not the biggest fan of motion controls, especially when they just get shoehorned into stuff because it's there. But there's a lot of great stuff on the Wii. What the Wii did to revive Nintendo as a household name is gigantic. And also, I mean, you had the Xbox 360 is a fucking fantastic console, as long as it doesn't red ring, and die or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. True. I'm one of the lucky ones where mine has never done that, which is impressive. I did have a hard drive die once, which if you go back and listen to our Nier episode, you'll hear all about that one. But other than that, yeah, there's so much. And though there's a lot of negativity, or a lot of negatives rather, around sort of this necessity of having internet connectivity to your consoles all the time, in all fairness, I mean, Xbox Live Arcade was huge, there were a lot of really great indie titles that got exposed because of that. I'm like Castle Crashers was huge on Xbox Arcade. I think Geometry Wars, didn't that come like pre-installed or some shit, like with like every 360? I feel like
it feels like it did. It feels like it. It wasn't, but it feels like
it. Yeah. Like it just showed up on my console. I think I don't even know how it got there, but it's like that one U2 song on old iPhones. Anyway, so so yeah, it was a fantastic generation. Now, it's not as high on my list because, as many folks know, I came to that particular generation really late in its life cycle because I was pretty much 100% PC gaming for a number of years. And so the most I had was the Wii at this time, and I didn't pick up an Xbox 360 till it was kind of towards the end of its sort of console life cycle, which is great for picking up a bunch of bargain bin games. But at any rate, really, really great generation though. Real solid.
I'm gonna mostly withhold my comments on this generation,
Okay.
but I think it's a good solid pick, of course. Yes. My number 3 is probably going to be one that people would think I would place higher just because of the nature of the show. But my number 3 is going to be the 4th generation, which is the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, or Mega Drive, or Megasys, depending on, how you live your life. The Turbo Graphics 16 or PC Engine, and the Game Boy or not slash Game Gear, but the Game Boy and the Game Gear, or the Atari Lynx, which I don't really consider. I don't care. Does anyone care about the Atari Lynx? I'm sure there's one of you listening out there. And no, I'm not including microcomputers, so I don't know if the Amiga is part of this. I don't care. I'm just going for the major consoles, okay? As I did with everything else. Anyway, 4th generation. I adore this generation, which, that means that the ones after this, I obviously love too. I just think, like, I have to put this generation somewhere on my list because this is really the formative years generation. The Super Nintendo and the Genesis, the console wars, this was my childhood. And I think this really is during this time. If you want to throw the Neo Geo in there as well, which it does technically go in there, this is like peak 2D gaming. This is when you had the most talented developers of the time making 2D games for the audience. 2D platformers. A lot of people think the best RPGs on a console ever released were released during this time. Like a lot of the shooters, or the shmups, if you want to call them that, like the best ones were released during this time. This is just like kind of the last breath of the arcade conversion mentality, where you still had a balanced or hard difficulty, but also understanding that you were making a game for the home audience. Like, Shane, I know you love Contra 3. Contra 3 is a hard-ass game.
It is.
But it's not arcade hard. I love Streets of Rage 2. It's my favorite game of all time. It is a difficult game, but it's not arcade hard. This is where they are finally learning to strike that balance, and I think you get just fully complete games that can be enjoyed, and they don't take up an eternity of your time in order to sit down and play them. They respect your time for the most part, unless they implicitly tell you they're not going to, like a lot of RPGs, but you know what you're getting into when you're getting into it. And as Shane said with the 6th generation, these consoles weren't online, so it's easy to go back to now and get the full experience, not have to worry about update patches or some weird online compatibility. If you have the ROM or you have the system and the physical cartridge, you can play these easily. And this is also like the ease of access. Like, it's not too difficult to figure out how to play the biggest games on the system. Yes, they came with manuals, and we all miss manuals, but for the most part, the games that everyone loves from this generation, you can just sit down, pick up, and play, and you're going to know how to play them, and you're not going to get an annoying 30-minute tutorial on how to do it. Do some games do that? Yes, but we don't talk about those games. I'm ignoring them for now. But I don't know. It's just a feeling. There's a lot of vibes here, a lot of nostalgia, formative year generation, of course. So that's my number 3.
Number 2.
So, Chris.
Yes.
You may be interested to know what my number 2 is.
Is it the 4th generation?
It is.
Oh.
Yeah. So
continuing it on the conversation. Let's do it.
Yeah. I mean, you did a pretty good job of covering most of what I would really say about it. I think the biggest thing, apart from the fact that this is, one half-ish of, I think, the formative generations for me. And it's the earlier half, so spoiler for my number 1 probably. But it really was the sort of like pinnacle of sprite-based gaming, like 2-dimensional gaming, like some of the very best OG. Because I mean, you know, you could talk all day about like Shovel Knight is fucking incredible, but that comes with years and years of technological improvements trying to look retro, right? Which they fucking kill it. But for like the OGs, this generation was the culmination of everything that developers had learned through, you know, the NES era, leveraging the new technology coming out in things like the Super Nintendo. And by the end of the gen, pushing these consoles really to their limits, and the results are fantastic in a lot of cases, the likes of which we will never see again. There will be a lot of, and continue to be a lot of indie games that are going to be expertly crafted and will do as best as they can to like capture that same sort of feel. But if you were there, then it's never going to be quite the same. It was really kind of the end of an era, I think, in a lot of ways.
The last time 2D games were popular and part of the monoculture.
Yeah, for sure.
My number 2, and I think this, based on what you said before, you might be talking about this generation soon, is the 5th generation, which is the PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, Saturn, and Game Boy Color. If you want to include the Game Boy Color as a separate generation, which Nintendo does not, oddly, because I guess that works out better for them in total sales, which who cares? Apparently Nintendo does. So why is this number 2? Do I necessarily think like all the games from this generation are better than the 4th generation? Not really, actually. But what is going on here, why I think it's a better generation, is because every single system had a different experience. PlayStation, like you go to the PlayStation 1 and you're going to get a different experience than what N64 owners got. And those people are going to have a different experience than what Saturn owners got. And yes, I understand that there weren't a lot of Saturn owners in the United States, you know, North America or Europe, but there were quite a few in Japan. So they're like each console has a unique experience, and each one of those experiences, when you look back in totality, was so experimental. I was talking about risks the last time that a generation took serious risks, which is the 4th generation, which is why this one is higher. It's just, it was the first generation going into 3D as a mainstay, as this is the future. So everyone was trying something different. Control schemes weren't normalized, which can make for some really weird and just fun and frustrating and interesting experiences, because they were trying to nail down what made the 3D environment good. And you go into that, sometimes you're like, man, I can really see what things were like back then. It was very, and it's hard to play this, but at the same time, it's also one of those things, there's this, it's discovery. And just when you see how much effort was put into trying to go into the next generation and who thrived and who didn't thrive, I think the reason this is my number 2 is just more out of interest, and more how there are so many games that I probably would be inclined to just pass over, but then I actually go and play and like, wow, this is really solid. There are a lot of good characteristics, and I could see what they're trying to do. And that's the joy, is trying to interpret what developers were trying to accomplish. Or again, when it goes back to what the foundations that I was talking about in the 6th gen would move on into the next gen with that sixth generation. And just trying to get their feet and trying to take really refined qualities from the 4th generation and make a quality product and a new dimension of gaming. And this is why I think it's so intriguing. It's also like you were saying, a second half of the formative years where this is what I was playing in my teenage years. You know, they came out in 95, but I really got into it like 12, 13, 14. This is like what I should have the most amount of nostalgia for. So it being number 2 would track. It's just like the evolution of games and the feeling that that jump gave from the previous generation, from the 4th gen to the 5th gen. I don't think could ever be captured on any level ever again. To experience that leap in technology, I don't think that could happen. So that's a lot of the reasons why it's my number two. It still blows my mind when I go back. I mean, I'm making a show on our Patreon called IO Saturnalia because every single time I go back there, I'm impressed by what the Saturn was doing. And this is the least popular console. And so there's entire blind spots on the N64 and PlayStation 1 that just every time I look at them, I'm like, they were doing that then. And it's exciting to see those things and realize just what developers are trying to accomplish. So yeah, my number two is the 5th gen. I love it. Um, it always impresses me, no matter how bad or good it may be. I love it. Yeah, number two.
Number 1.
Well, here we are arriving at the top of the dog pile. And Chris was correct because my number one just so happens to be the 5th generation. So like I said, this was the other half of, you know, my formative years as well. So it's probably not very surprising that it's so high on my list. There's a very, very strong amount of nostalgia for the N64 in particular. I had many a split screen gaming session on GoldenEye with friends and pizza and sleepovers and playing the absolute shit out of Super Mario 64. I think I completed that game multiple times. One of those times I actually got all the stars too, so I played it a lot. Ocarina of Time is still my favorite Zelda game, just period. And even outside of N64, I mean, there are so many others. I mean, obviously FF7, Resident Evil 2, like there's so many good things that came out of this era. And I think I didn't even think about this, honestly, when I was putting this list together, because it was largely, I was just sort of like focusing on my personal experiences, which we tend to do, but you really nailed it. And I think it's a big part of why this also just feels so special. It is because this is like the last generation of consoles before everything started to get really homogenized. Like when you were pointing out, like the experience that you'd get if you bought an N64 was vastly different than if you were playing, you know, the PlayStation, or if you were like the 12 people that had a Saturn. Then they were completely different. Now granted, I mean, I think there were a handful of titles that probably made it across multiples, but like for the most part, there was a lot of console exclusivity, but there was also, like you said, there was a lot of just completely different approaches to things because we were in this new frontier of 3D gaming on consoles with controllers. It was anybody's game. You know, there wasn't a blueprint to follow like there is now, because we figured it out. We solved the problem. So like every controller pretty much looks the same, maybe just slightly different for branding purposes, but more or less they're all identical now, and they probably will be forever until we stop using our hands to play video games like babies. But yeah, it was just like a really special time with that, because I mean, fucking A, man, like the N64 controller is a hideous beast, but it works though, like in a weird way. And yeah. I mean, like, granted, that's also very much my bias because I got real good with, you know, using an N64 controller back in the day, but for what it was trying to do, it looks absolutely batshit insane, especially to any like kid now. They'd look at it and be like, what the fuck do I do with this? But back then we had no preconceived notions of what anything was supposed to be. And so we were like, yeah, okay, this fucking makes sense. I got a stick. I can run around with that. I got a little trigger thing. Okay, cool. And I've got some buttons. Yeah, I don't know. This works. And it did, you know? So I think that's, and this is more of like a pontificatory thing than anything, but I just like, it kind of bums me out. This is my like old man yells at cloud moment, I suppose. that there's just we've lost, and this actually goes like across the board in a lot of just different societal like verticals, honestly. But if we're talking about like video games specifically, I feel like we've just lost a lot of that very identifiable personality that the different
Yeah.
consoles and console makers had. Like it's gone. It's the same thing as like, oh, McDonald's used to be this colorful building with all this cool shit, and now it looks like a corporate office. Like everything is homogenized and bland now. And we could go into why that is, but that's not the purpose of this episode. Nobody wants to talk about shareholder value or private equity firms. So, anyway, no. That's my number one. There's a lot going for it. And, there's a shit ton of jank, but that kind of came with the territory of being in a sort of a new space at the time. But man, if it wasn't just really, really interesting to watch unfold.
It was a brand new frontier. It will never have that again.
Nope.
We will never have that again. Man.
Well, now we made ourselves sad.
Yeah. Anyway, time for my number one as I'm depressed. My number one is the 7th gen, which Shane already talked about. And as a reminder, that is the PS3, 360 Wii, Nintendo DS, and PSP. Why is this my number one? And I kind of alluded to this on the sixth gen. Sixth is another word I struggle with, by the way, as many people do, oddly enough. But the 7th gen, as I alluded to back in the 6th gen, there was still room for refinement in the 3D field. Like they had finally gotten the graphics up to somewhere where they wanted to. They started understanding things in terms of how things should control, so on and so forth. But I really think that the 7th gen is where developers finally fully understood the full capabilities of 3D gaming and really understood how to tell a narrative story in 3D gaming. You started seeing it at the tail end of the 6th generation. But this is when you get into cinematic storytelling. Some would say that was for the worse, but this is where you really get to approach that. You see the rebirth of the arcade type of gaming with Xbox Live Arcade. Yes, it was online. There were physical versions out there, though. But you finally saw that more twitchy approach to gaming return and getting those smaller bites of games. And that became popular, and it became very popular with the indies. You saw the birth of the indies and its popularity. Not that indies weren't around before, but this is the first time in a generation where you would see indie developers get a legitimate chance on a major platform. That like no one had. If you wanted to find an indie developer before, you had to have some underground knowledge shit. But now Xbox Live Arcade brought that to the forefront, which forced the PlayStation 3, PSN, Sony, to do the same thing on their console and bring them over. You saw kind of the rebirth of older franchises because of the capability to do online downloads. Not so much as that we saw in the 8th gen, which was my 5th pick, but you started to see companies recognizing that there was a desire for older properties and that they could make them on a budget and release them on an online platform like a Mega Man 9 and Mega Man 10, or a lot of games that actually Capcom made that also came out on the Steam platforms. And this is, like I said, the really build up to mainstream happened during the 8th gen, but those building blocks were there in the 7th generation. Not to mention like games that I don't necessarily like, but some of the biggest games for PlayStation branding came out at the end of the PS3 with The Last of Us, which had mind-blowing graphics for the time. And you're also talking about the introduction of HD gaming and how much a game like Gears of War just blew our socks off, which I think is the last time anyone will ever be impressed by a graphical leap. I know I kind of said that with the PS1, but like it's the last time people are like, whoa, games can do that. I didn't think that we'd see this in this fidelity. And like a lot of new franchises came out during this time that are important to gaming to this day that really I don't think developers and publishers have fully moved on from yet. Microsoft has not I think one of the biggest reasons Xbox has failed, other than the fact that Sony destroyed them with their physical gaming restrictions for the Xbox One at an E3 that they had to reverse course on. But the thing is that Microsoft hasn't moved on from the brands they established during the 360 era. They haven't been able to really move forward with those. Whereas PlayStation, they have, or they've reinvented things that have gone back to like PS2, like God of War and stuff like that, right? But like Xbox, just this was the generation of Xbox. I think this is the first generation that I can think of, and probably the only generation that I can think of, where a Western developed console was the dominant console in its own region. I think that's the only time that has ever happened. It's because the
Mm.
360 dominated in North America. It had North American sensibilities, and I am a North American. I live in the United States. So it directly appealed to people like me. Um, and then you look at the Wii and the DS and the PSP, and I'll say more about the Wii and the DS here specifically, is that there were still unique avenues to gaming. The Wii had the motion controls. It appealed to a very broad and large audience. It was a budget console, and it just introduced a new way to play that both Sony and Microsoft incorporated with the Kinect, with the Move and the Kinect, respectively. The Move being more of a failure, kind of came back for a little while, then went away again. And the Kinect then went to the next generation and massively flopped. And everyone looks back at those and they think, oh, those were all crap. But the Kinect sold a ton. Like people were hyped for it. And then you look at the Nintendo DS and how that changed the approach to gaming and how successful that was, and just how it just invited a whole new group of people into gaming with this dual screen gaming and more casual approach with like Brain Age and Sudoku games and all these things like that with the touchscreen um integration and everything that came along with that, and also appealing to hardcore gamers. Not to mention every major system aside from the PSP, because it didn't have a predecessor, at either at launch or at some point during its life, had backwards compatibility. The PS3 was backwards compatible with both PS1 and PS2 games. It dropped PS2 later, but it always had a backwards compatibility with PlayStation 1 games. The 360 had backwards compatibility with Xbox games. The Wii had backwards compatibility with GameCube games. The DS had backwards compatibility with Game Boy Advance games. So this is an entire generation where every single console, you could just buy it and you could import your old library into it and you could continue to play it. That's something that we only see today. And like the Switch 2 finally did with the Switch. You can't play Wii U games on your Switch, unfortunately. It just doesn't take it. I don't know why. But like the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X are fine like that. It's finally the same way where they can take every games. But again, that's probably because it's just an extension of the eighth generation. So there's a lot of respect towards the previous generation here, so that kind of incorporates them into it. And this is the last generation where you don't have to connect online if you don't want to in order to play your games. You don't have to. Now, you can make the argument for a lot of games on the PS4 and Xbox, Xbox One and Series X and PlayStation 5. There's like a site that's like, does it play offline or something like that? I want to give them credit. They're a fantastic a social media site, and they have a lot of resources, but I can't think of them right now. But this is the last one. You don't really have to worry about it, particularly for the Wii, and DS. But it's just one of those things again that's lost. It's lost, and you start seeing that in the tail end of the generation when things started getting rushed to market. But in the first half of that generation, still not everyone had access to broadband. Even though the success of the Xbox Live Arcade would argue differently, it was still an experience that was more kind of segregated and partitioned off, but it was still a significant impact. I think this is also coupled with the fact this is the first generation where you really started to see online reviews and get an online culture separate from your major sites. Like you started getting video reviews and you started getting more in-depth conversations with things. Um, Very special time. Just an amazing time. As I think you said it right, Shane. This was like the golden age of video games where things, yes, they were getting more corporatized, but it wasn't like over corporatized. Yes, there were significant flaws, as there always will be when things are over, like just too homogenous, and it was getting that way. But it still felt like they were competing for your attention, and in one way or another, and they wanted the gamers' attention, and they wanted to appeal as to many people as possible while providing a quality experience. And I think as tastes diverged and gaming became bigger and less homogenized, it like each release becomes less and less significant. And I think this is the last generation where a single game release was a big deal on any console, like a massive deal. Now, I mean, like outside of like Grand Theft Auto, which is just a weird anomaly. But every single developer had a significant release that people would be excited about. So that's my number one. It's the seventh gen, and yeah, that's another time in my life, that generation of consoles, that I would trade anything in the world to go back to and experience again for the first time.
Awesome. Well, folks, there you have it. Our top 5 video game console generations. You know, if we didn't pick one of your faves, I feel like we covered like the the hits. Like, you know, we did the big ones, but I don't know, maybe something we just like totally glazed over. Cause I mean, there are a few that we didn't really touch on. So I'd be curious to know, like, if anybody out there, you know, if you would have put one of those that we didn't even bring up on your own personal list, and why. Maybe we have some listeners out there that, you know, you're just like, you know what, man, first gen, baby, all the way. I am the oldest
Sure.
of the old school.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'd be cool. But anyway, we hope that you enjoyed our lists. And if you want to share with us your thoughts, you could jump into our public Discord. It is free to join. And we have, if I do say so myself, a pretty fantastic little community in there. Nothing that we did to make that happen other than just kind of giving them a space to come and talk. But, they, you know, they kind of run things on their own and they do it pretty well. So, if you want to join in on all of that, because we've always got stuff going on, you can find that along with our other goodies like, I don't know, our merch store, which is, the new hotness with, the better high quality merch that I'm particularly proud of. And, also our Patreon, if you are willing and able to support the show in that fashion. I know times be tough right now, and you know, we don't begrudge anybody not doing that because like we get it. So you know, just your listenership is really all we're looking for, and we hope that we can provide you with some quality entertainment on the cheap, free as in beer. So anyway, so that's that. All of that stuff can be found at our link tree, which happens to be linktr.ee/retro hangover. Chris, would you like to add anything to this little pitch here before we wrap this flight up for today?
Yeah, sure. Just reiterating that the Patreon is the place where you can submit and nominate topics for the very show that you're listening to right now. Once again, Keith Gasper is on a 3-win streak right now. So if you want to contribute your ideas, even though our backlog is awesome. Man, English is just failing me today. Our backlog is massive in terms of the topics.
So the Maclog is an entirely different list.
I'm macking it.
Mhm.
But our top 5 Maclogs. Just head on over there, and like Shane said, we understand if you can't support. Like, times are what they are. But if you are interested in supporting, yeah, just head on over there. We love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to see your votes. And yeah, that's all I really have to say there.
Beautiful. All right. Well, in that case, until the next flight.
Play with your generationally deformed but surprisingly large and delicious joysticks.